My name is Chloe. For too long, draining years, I have been a junior designer at Innovate Corp, a company that sounds much more exciting than it is. My official title is Associate Creative Visionary, which is a fancy way of saying I do all the work and get none of the credit. My boss, Linda, is a master of a very specific kind of theft. She doesn't steal pens from the supply closet or food from the breakroom fridge. She steals something far more valuable: momentum. A color palette I'd passionately described on a Monday, inspired by a sunset-eyed scene, would become her groundbreaking visual strategy in a Wednesday's client pitch. A user interface layout I'd sketched on a napkin during a lunch break, trying to solve a workflow problem, would reappear in her presentation deck, polished in slick software and rebranded as her own innovative solution. Each time it happened, a little piece of my professional spirit chipped away. I was drowning in a quiet, seething frustration, but the stark reality of student loan payments and the rent on my tiny, one-bedroom apartment kept me silent and compliant. I clung to the naive hope that my relentless dedication and the sheer quality of my work would eventually be seen and recognized by someone, anyone, higher up the food chain. The atmosphere in the open-plan office shifted palpably one Tuesday morning. A hushed excitement replaced the usual low hum of keyboards and muted conversations. The Aquapure project was officially announced. Aquapure wasn't just another client. They were a global hydration giant, a household name, and their new EcoVantage line was the most anticipated, well-funded sustainable product launch in the industry in a decade. The internal memo from the CEO himself promised that the lead designer on the winning pitch would receive not just a promotion to creative director, but a life-changing bonus equivalent to a full year's salary. This was more than an opportunity. It was a lottery ticket. It was a break I had been starving for, the chance to finally step out of the shadows and into a career, not just a job. For 3 intense, caffeine-fueled weeks, the Aquapure project was my entire world. My social life vanished. My friends' texts went unanswered. My apartment, once a cozy haven, became a war room, a nest of crumpled sketches, primitive prototypes fashioned from straws, tape, and clay, and stacks of scientific papers on polymer compression and microfiltration technology. I lived and breathed sustainable design. The breakthrough, as these things often do, hit me with the force of a lightning bolt at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, the deep silence of the night amplifying the almost audible click of understanding in my mind. I called it the EcoSpire. It was a sleek, elegant water bottle that collapsed inwardly with a satisfying, mechanical click, reducing its volume by a full 50%, making it incredibly portable. Its genius was paired with a revolutionary, user-replaceable filter cartridge that lasted twice as long as any competitors, addressing both plastic waste and consumer convenience in one beautiful, functional package. It was, I knew with every fiber of my being, a winning idea. I barely slept 2 hours, fueled by a potent mix of adrenaline and hope. The next morning, I charged into Linda's corner office, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I didn't wait for an invitation. I spread my detailed, annotated sketches and the basic 3D models I'd rendered on my laptop across her pristine, glass desk, my words tumbling out in an excited, unstoppable rush. See, Linda, the compression mechanism is here. It's entirely mechanical and intuitive, no cheap plastic hinges, and the filter replacement is tool-free. Right here, see? A simple quarter turn. I was practically vibrating. Linda leaned forward, but she wasn't looking at the design with the eye of a fellow creator. She was assessing it like a predator sizing up a particularly plump and unsuspecting prey. Her eyes, usually sharp and dismissive, now held a calculating, greedy glint I had come to dread over the past 2 years. "This is remarkably promising, Chloe," she said, her voice smooth as silk, a tone she reserved for moments when she wanted something. She was already neatly stacking my papers, a proprietary gesture that made my skin crawl. "This is exactly the kind of high-level, forward-thinking the senior leadership team needs to see. I'll present it to them in the strategy meeting this afternoon and ensure your preliminary efforts are duly noted." She used the word preliminary like a weapon, diminishing my creation to a mere rough draft. I left her office with the knot of unease in my stomach tightening into a hard, cold ball of certainty. I knew, with a dread that was becoming my constant companion, Exactly what was about to happen. The confirmation of my betrayal landed in my inbox at 4:37 p.m., just as the office was beginning to wind down. The company-wide email subject line was a punch to the gut. A round of applause for Linda's visionary Aquapact design. I opened the attachment with trembling hands, a part of me still hoping against hope. There it was. My EcoSpire, now swathed in Aquapure's signature corporate blue, had been christened the Aquapact. My name was nowhere to be found. The design summary, which I had written in a burst of inspiration, was now attributed to her, copied almost word for word. She hadn't just been inspired by my work. She had executed a perfect, brazen heist in broad daylight. A hot wave of humiliation, followed by a cold, sharp rage, washed over me. I felt like a fool, a useful idiot whose only purpose was to feed the machine of Linda's ambition. I waited until the office emptied out, the silence feeling heavy and accusatory. I found her at her desk, calmly packing her expensive leather briefcase. "Linda," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, belying the storm inside me. "The Aquapact is the EcoSpire. It's my design. Every line of it." She didn't even have the decency to look surprised or guilty. She gave me a patient, condescending smile, the kind you'd give a slow child who has failed to grasp a simple concept. "Chloe, you have to understand how truly collaborative creative environments work," she chided, her tone dripping with fomentership. "An initial spark is meaningless without development, refinement, and executive-level execution. I transformed your raw concept into a viable, market-ready product. This possessiveness, it's very junior-level thinking. And," she added, her voice dropping into a whisper laced with unmistakable menace, "I would strongly recommend you reconsider your tone. Your probationary review is next month, and I'd hate to see such a negative, uncollaborative attitude reflected in my report." The threat was crystal clear, a blade held to my professional throat. I was trapped, but as I walked away from her office, the simmering anger didn't boil over. It solidified into a cold, hard, diamond-sharp resolve. She had mistaken my silence for weakness. It was time to show her it had been strategy all along. The following Monday, she summoned me with a saccharine-sweet tone that set my teeth on edge. "Chloe, wonderful news. You've been assigned to build the final, presentation-ready prototype and prepare the full, multimedia pitch deck for Aquapure. No one knows the foundational concepts quite like you do." She was so transparent, so utterly confident in her power over me, that she was handing me the keys to my own revenge and believing I was too naive and frightened to see it, let alone use them. I smiled, a wide, genuine smile that for the first time in years wasn't forced. It was the smile of a hunter who has just been invited into the lion's den. "Thank you for this incredible opportunity, Linda," I said, my voice dripping with false gratitude. "I promise you, I will make it absolutely perfect." And I meant it with every fiber of my being. It would be a perfect trap, engineered down to the last detail. I threw myself into the work with an artist's passion and a saboteur's cold precision. The physical prototype was a masterpiece of deception. I crafted it with meticulous, loving care, sourcing the highest quality, food-grade polymers and medical-grade stainless steel for the compression mechanism. It compressed with a smooth, authoritative, satisfying click. The filter snapped into place with a perfect, airtight seal. To any observer, it was a flawless piece of industrial design, a testament to my skill. The sabotage was hidden not in the object itself, but in the architecture of the presentation, in the places I knew Linda's arrogance and laziness would blind her. I personally wrote the dense, technical speaker notes for the section on the compression seals engineering. I embedded pressure calculations and material stress tolerances that were elegantly, plausibly wrong. To a layperson like Linda, they sounded impressively technical. To an engineer, they were a glaring, fundamental red flag that screamed catastrophic failure waiting to happen. My masterstroke, however, was the live demonstration. I explicitly specified in the official run-of-show document, a document I knew Linda would only skim for her cues, that for the live demonstration, we should use a specially formulated, colored viscous liquid. I wrote that it would provide a superior visual representation of the filtration process for the clients. I personally sourced a non-toxic but unusually dense and syrupy fluid, knowing its specific weight would create critical, unsustainable pressure in the meticulously engineered compression chamber I had built. The prototype was perfect, but it was designed for water, not for this engineered goo. I was setting the stage for a very specific and very public disaster. The day of the Aquapure presentation felt like the opening night of a play I had written, directed, staged, and rigged with explosives. The main, glass-walled conference room was thick with tension and ambition. Mr. Robert Davis, Aquapure's legendary CEO, a man known throughout the industry for his ruthless discernment and low tolerance for nonsense, sat at the head of the table, his arms crossed over his chest, his expression unreadable. Linda stood beside the prototype, a vision of corporate confidence in her impeccably tailored, stark white blouse. I took my designated seat in the very back row, a silent, seemingly nervous spectator to the downfall I had so carefully engineered. Linda began her presentation, and she was, I had to admit, magnificent. She was a born performer. She delivered the script I had written with the conviction of a true believer, weaving a narrative of innovation, environmental stewardship, and market disruption. She owned the room, commanding everyone's attention. She was selling my dream with such passion that for a moment, I felt a twinge of pity. Then, she clicked to the technical slide, the one with the sabotage data. She read the faulty numbers and specifications I had planted, her voice ringing with absolute, unshakable authority. I held my breath. This was the first test. The lead Aquapure engineer, a man named Dr. Evans with a thoughtful brow and kind, intelligent eyes, slowly raised his hand. "Pardon the interruption, Ms. Linda," he said, his tone respectful but firm. "But the figures you're citing for the tensile strength of the polymer under compression, they appear to be miscalibrated. At that PSI, given the chamber dimensions you've listed, the seal would be critically compromised during normal use. It wouldn't just fail, it would likely fail violently." A flash of pure, unadulterated annoyance crossed Linda's face. This was an inconvenience, a fly buzzing around her perfect presentation. She waved a dismissive, perfectly manicured hand. "I appreciate your concern, Dr. Evans, but our internal data is comprehensive and has been rigorously validated through multiple testing phases," she stated, doubling down on the lie with breathtaking arrogance. She was publicly marrying herself to the false data, staking her entire reputation on it. The trap was now set, and she had not only stepped into it but was proudly dancing in the center. I allowed myself a small, cold smile in the darkness of the back row. She was so sure of her invincibility, so sure of my powerlessness, that she couldn't even conceive she was being played. Then came the moment of truth, the climax of my carefully orchestrated drama. "And now, the moment you've all been waiting for," Linda announced, her voice dripping with theatricality. "See for yourselves how the Aquapact truly redefines convenience and portability." She placed her hands on the beautiful, doomed prototype, a symbol of my stolen labor, and pressed down. There was a tense, silent moment where the well-crafted mechanism held, a testament to my real skill. Then, the physics I had secretly orchestrated took over. A sharp, explosive pop, a sound like a small-caliber gunshot, shattered the quiet, followed by a sickening, prolonged hiss. The primary compression seal violently gave way, and the thick, blue, syrupy liquid I had procured erupted, jetting across the polished mahogany table in a sticky wave and spraying in a fine, spectacular mist across Linda's pristine white blouse, leaving indelible, damning stains. The room plunged into a stunned, profound silence. The only sound was the frantic hiss of fluid still escaping the broken prototype, and the low hum of the projector. You could feel the second-hand embarrassment and shock radiating from every person in the room. Mr. Davis rose from his chair with a slow, deliberate motion that commanded every ounce of attention in the room. His face was a mask of cold, controlled fury. He didn't need to raise his voice. "This is utterly unacceptable," he said, his voice low and cutting like a whip. Every word was measured and precise, which made it all the more devastating. "You present us with fabricated data, and you demonstrate a product that fails catastrophically, and I mean catastrophically, in its most basic function. This demonstrates a profound lack of both integrity and fundamental competence. Our proposed partnership with Innovate Corp is hereby terminated, effective immediately." The finality in his voice was absolute. As the Aquapure team stood to leave in a wave of disgusted murmurs and shaking heads, our company's CEO, who had been observing the entire train wreck with a face like granite, spoke a single devastating word. Linda! He didn't need to say another word. She was escorted from the building by security before lunchtime, her career in tatters. A week later, the office was a morose, shell-shocked place. The loss of the Aquapure account had triggered a round of layoffs. The air was thick with fear and resentment. I was quietly cleaning out my desk, my own future at the company completely uncertain, when my personal phone vibrated with an unknown number. I stepped into a vacant conference room to answer, my heart in my throat. Chloe, a calm, authoritative voice said. This is Robert Davis. My blood ran cold. Was he calling to sue me? To blacklist me from the entire industry? We conducted a thorough internal review following that illuminating presentation, he continued, and I could hear the careful choice of words. The evidence is clear and undeniable that the original EcoSpire design was wholly your intellectual property. We also have a rather strong suspicion regarding the precise, and let's say, creative nature of its very public failure. He paused, and I could have sworn I heard a trace of grim amusement and respect in his tone. It showed a surprising depth of understanding, both of engineering principles and of human nature. He let that hang in the air for a moment before continuing. We have no further interest in a partnership with Innovate Corporation. However, we have every interest in the EcoSpire, and we have the utmost interest in the brilliant, resourceful, and frankly, courageous designer who created it and who knew exactly how to expose the truth when cornered. I was leaning against the glass wall for support, my legs feeling weak. We are prepared to offer you the position of Senior Product Designer at Aquapure Labs, Mr. Davis said, his voice now all business. You would report directly to me, with a mandate to build a new team and bring the true, authentic EcoSpire to market. The salary will be exactly double what you earn now, with a significant project completion bonus and full ownership of the patent. The numbers he quoted next made my head spin. It was more money than I had ever dreamed of making. I didn't just sabotage my boss. I didn't just get her fired. I had exposed a systemic liar and a toxic performer using the very tools of her trade, deception, presentation, and arrogance, and turned them against her. In doing so, I didn't just win a battle or get petty revenge. I was being offered the keys to the kingdom she had so desperately wanted for herself. I had been given the power to build my own vision, on my own terms, with the full backing of an industry leader. Standing there in that empty conference room, the weight of the offer settled on me. It wasn't just a job, it was validation. It was justice. It was the universe, or perhaps just a clever CEO, righting a profound wrong. I thought of all the late nights, the stolen ideas, the condescending smiles, the constant, grinding feeling of being undervalued. This was the other side of that. Mr. Davis, I said, my voice clear and steady, no trace of the nervous junior employee left. Thank you for this incredible offer. I am very interested. There are, however, a few points regarding the project timeline and my team's resource allocation that I would like to discuss before I formally accept. I was no longer a supplicant. I was a partner. And he knew it. I learned a lesson more valuable than any bonus or title. In the face of injustice, quiet perseverance isn't always enough. Sometimes, you have to be smart. Sometimes, you have to be strategic. And sometimes, you have to build a trap so perfect, so elegantly designed, that when your enemy steps into it, they don't just fall, they inadvertently launch you to the very place you were always meant to be. I didn't need to become like Linda to defeat her. I just had to be better, smarter, and more patient. And in the end, that made all the difference.